Hi there, it's Shannon.
And Micah.
We are the co-founders and coaches at Shine Bright Coaching. And today we are here to chat with you about imposter syndrome. And stay tuned to the end of the video because we're going to talk you through what is it exactly, how do you know if you have it, if it's your environment that's contributing to imposter syndrome, or is there something that you can do to get back your confidence in yourself. So, all right. Imposter syndrome. As career coaches, it has to be the number one thing that we hear from our clients on a consistent basis. So what is it exactly? So I think that, there's a lot of definitions, but ultimately it's this idea that you feel like a fraud, right? You feel like you're lacking in some way, that you might be found out, that you actually don't have the skills or the strengths or the value that, other people think you do, or you're trying to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes around who you actually are. So, it's been a big buzzword. It's, been in the lexicon for quite a while now. And I think, it's helpful to kind of break this down a little bit, because ultimately when our clients come to us and they say they have imposter syndrome, ultimately, they're thinking that there's something wrong with them, right? That there's some sort of lack, right? They don't have anything worthwhile. They don't have strengths or skill sets. And, it kind of stops there, the reflection, right? It's like, something's wrong with me, and how do I fix that? And I think what we want to talk about and kind of share with you today is what we do with our clients to really unpack what is the imposter syndrome, why are they feeling this way, and what are some things that they can do to actually feel confident in their own skin and with what they have to offer, and feel like they can find success in their career. So what do you see when clients are coming to you and saying they have imposter syndrome?
Well, what I just think is so interesting, and I'm never surprised anymore, but at the beginning I kind of was, in terms of who thinks they have
Right.
imposter syndrome.
So true.
So I'm always totally shocked when it's someone who, I'm looking at their LinkedIn before our first meeting, and they're very accomplished and, look like they're firmly in their career and on a path.
Yeah.
And they show up sharing with me these same types of insecurities and feelings of being lesser than, as a young college kid who just graduated.
Yep.
And, I'm working with them to help determine that path. And lo and behold, in the last job they had or the one that they previously hold, they're feeling the same thing.
Yep.
And the way that they describe it and the feelings that they have, they sound identical.
Yeah. I think that's so great to hear, right? I think oftentimes people aren't talking about this, right? You feel very isolated, you feel alone. And, we're in a unique position because we spend our days talking to people. And I think you're so right. No one is immune to these feelings of inadequacy or lack. And so, let's break this down a little bit further. So, we don't want to go into this a ton, but I do think, there's been some really great research and two particularly really good articles that came out in the last few years in the Harvard Business Review, titled, Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome. And I think, we'll put the links in the comments below because I really recommend going and reading them. But it kind of goes into, is it the environment that you're in that's actually kind of fueling or feeding some of these feelings that you don't fit in, that, what success looks like within your organization doesn't look like you, right? And this, kind of is breaking down that, history of organizations and whatnot tend to be, look the same, right? It tends to be, maybe white males and a certain economic status, right, are at the helm of a lot of organizations. And so if you're a woman or a person of color and you're trying to work yourself up or progress in your career in an organization where no one at the top looks like you, right, it can be really easy to succumb to this idea that, I don't have anything of value, or I'm lesser than, or I'm lacking in some way. So I think that is one thing to kind of be considering when those feelings are starting to, kind of surface for you is it me, right? Or is this organization not necessarily valuing a greater diversity of ideas, skill sets, strengths, different types of people? So thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. because environments are something that if we're not intentional and we're not thinking about, it really bleeds into every aspect of our day, right? So how you're sitting and showing up in that meeting, what your office is, where your cubicle is, all of these things your brain is actually taking in and considering and rationalizing, right? And so if we're allowing that to just run rampant, then we just end up wherever our understanding is. And so if we're not stretching ourselves, if we're not self-reflecting, if we're not saying, hey, I just came out of that meeting where there was no space for me to contribute an idea, then we're going to immediately go to, well, obviously everyone thinks I don't have something to contribute.
Right.
Whereas if I've self-reflected that, everyone else in that meeting was showing up in these certain ways, and that's the constant environment, and that's actually not how I show up or what my education or experience or background told me to be successful in, then we're actually just allowing someone else to steer the ship constantly, right? So self-reflection, paying attention, and considering environments and how they're affecting us is huge. And I love that you brought up those articles from the Harvard Business Review and put them in the link here, because just the topic, just reading about it, a lot of clients say, like, I didn't know what imposter syndrome was, but I started reading about it and oh my goodness, that's me, right? And so then they could start reflecting and doing the work. So I think that's a huge part, is environment, and then also keeping, abreast of topics that are happening in our world and culture.
Yeah. So, what we really have to offer on this subject is strengths. So, I think oftentimes clients come and, they're feeling, this imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, feeling a certain sense of lack. And I think, the anecdote that we've come up with and developed through our career coaching process that we take our clients through is we are all about how can we move you through a process of self-exploration where you can really dig into identifying what do you uniquely have to offer, right? We all have these innate ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that make us unique, and that also, set us up to be able to contribute in unique ways and be able to have unique strengths. And I think oftentimes, we're seeing this, with the clients that we work with, but I see it everywhere I go. So many people are walking around with no sense of, what do I have to offer? Do I have anything to offer? Do I have anything of value? And, if that's how you're feeling, if that's kind of what you're walking around with, you're more vulnerable to something like imposter syndrome, because the foundation of self-understanding or self-knowledge is shaky, right? You're still questioning. And I think, one thing that I want to just say right off the bat is, it's really natural and normal to be, a young person who is, fresh out of college or a few years out of college, and you're, taking jobs and saying yes to all the opportunities that come, and you don't quite know yourself yet, right? That's what the 20s are for. You're supposed to try things, have experiences, and through that develop a sense of self. So, we're not saying that there's something wrong with you if you don't have this knowledge yet, but I think that being able to recognize, oh, I am still having some big questions about who I am or what I have to offer, and maybe that's contributing to why I'm feeling this imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, because sometimes we do just jump from A to Z, and our 20s are about really developing a career maturation, which comes from experience and seeing how we show up in roles and things like that, and that does come with time. But it's so important. I think the reason that we see so many clients at varying ages and stages is that they didn't take the time to self-reflect or really see how they wanted to show up in a role or career that was maybe given to them as an opportunity when they were young, right? So it's more about just letting things, again, happen to you and not taking stock and saying, okay, I want to pay attention to how I want to show up. And so when we don't do that for a long time, then comes the imposter syndrome, right? It's about being on the sidelines of your life and your career and not really getting in there and playing the game, making mistakes and all of those things, but really being a part of the action and what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, right? So I think there's a natural maturation, right? So we, finish school if we decide to go to school or not. And in those 20s, we're trying different things, we're having different experiences. And I see there's a point, and it's a little bit different for each person, but late 20s, early 30s, where people are starting to feel like, okay, I'm done letting my career happen to me. I'm done just, taking what's coming or riding the waves, and I'm ready to start driving that ship, right? I'm ready to start, setting intentions and being really clear about, where do I want to go? How do I want to contribute? And, are feeling kind of done with the idea that other people are making those decisions. And so I think that's really natural and normal. But what Micah said that's really important is that if at that point, you don't take the time to do some self-reflection or self-exploration or work with a coach to really identify the path that you want to take and that's going to be the best fit for you, oftentimes people are just kind of, okay, this is the direction. I'm going to set my, sales towards the CEO position, right? And then here's where, 5 years, 10 years down the line, we're seeing that executive, right, or someone at the, director level who on paper looks successful, right, should be feeling happy and good about their career, but ultimately are feeling like a fraud or feeling unsuccessful, or they're saying they have imposter syndrome and, are feeling really a lot of shame around this. And, when we dig in and we start to work together, what we uncover is that they're operating outside of their strengths, right? They have, set their sails towards a career path and towards a direction that doesn't align with what they have to offer, right? Where their energy, their engagement, their satisfaction comes from, and ultimately they're not feeling confident about, how they're showing up day to day because they're spending the majority of their day operating outside of their strengths.
Yep. It's so huge, isn't it?
Yep.
And you said the word shame a moment ago, and it is absolutely insane to me how much power shame carries over us and where we bring it in our lives.
Yep.
So we feel this way at work, we carry it silently. We don't deal with it silently, but it pops its head up everywhere else in our relationships, in everything from planning a vacation to, where you're going to live and what kind of car you're going to drive and things like that. So again, this imposter syndrome is something that's silent and that we experience by ourselves. But if we continue to hide from addressing it, paying attention to it, talking about it, finding support from a coach, chatting with, even a mentor or a manager that's very beloved to us, and just kind of opening that door to letting that feeling out, understanding what it is, and then digging into the strengths, then digging into who you are and finding the reasons why you're feeling this way. And whether that is, as we started off talking about the environment or about, why you chose that career path. A lot of clients, go into things because their parents said it was a good idea.
Yep.
I've had so many clients at 33, 34 going, I'm here, this is where my destination was, and I feel like a fraud.
Doctor, lawyer, whatever that may be, right? Those are some typical ones.
But the one that I just appreciate is when we have clients who feel this way, seek the help, we dive in, we're looking at the strengths, we're seeing their operating system, and they go, oh my gosh, I actually like where I am, but I didn't feel confident to add this thought. I didn't think it was relevant to contribute this strength to that brainstorming with my team. It goes on and on and on with the lost opportunities because that person didn't really understand what was happening beneath the surface in themselves. And so they took the time, they figured it out. And it isn't a coincidence that they ended up maybe in that space that was a good career path, because there are these internal yearnings and pullings, but now they can honor them and they can grow from there. And it's a growth opportunity, right? Like, how can I lean in and use these things I know about myself now and make space to show up in the way that I want to and guide that ship?
Yeah, I love that. I think, ultimately when you're feeling the imposter syndrome, right? It's feeling like, something's lacking or I feel like a fraud. Our recommendation is like that's an indicator that you need to do the self work, right? You need to dig in. You need to start exploring, who am I? What are my strengths? Where does my energy, my engagement, satisfaction come from? Where are my greatest opportunities to add value? And all of that information that comes from that process, right, that we walk our clients through, then allows you to make really informed choices around, what are my options? So I love what Micah said. It doesn't always mean that you're in the wrong place, right? It could be, I'm actually right where I want to be, and now I feel more confident, right, to stay the course, right, to continue to strengthen and grow and develop my strengths, to feel more confident every day. Or you might dig in and realize, you know what, I'm in a role that doesn't fit my strengths, and that's why I don't feel confident, right? There's a reason why, but it doesn't mean that I'm lacking. It means that there's a misalignment between, who I am and what I have to offer and the role that I'm in or the company that I'm in, right? And so this is where maybe it's time to think about a change or a transition, right? And how can you do that really intentionally and really identify the paths, that are going to be a really good fit for you, where you can start to build that confidence, where you can start to feel like you can show up fully and authentically, and, start to come out from that shame, and really own who you are and what your strengths are. So any last thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think the key is always self-reflection. It's huge, and it's something that takes time and intentionality. But what I love about strengths-based coaching, about what we get to do all the time, is it gives you a framework to delve in.
Yep.
It gives you something to think about, to investigate, and to see that's tangible, and that makes it a little bit clearer a little more quickly.
Yep, love it. All right, so if you're feeling some of those imposter syndromes, start to do some self-reflecting, maybe call a coach, but don't stop there, right? This isn't about you and any sort of lack, right? You all got some strengths in there, so dig in, figure out what that is. So, all right, we'll talk soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.